Hello and welcome to episode 3 of Coworker Conspiracy with me, Nicole.
And me, Tyrone Johnson.
And Ty is chomping at the bits. He's been very excited for this one. I feel like this is one of the most highly anticipated. If you know me in real life or if you follow me on the socials, Nicole is Nick. I've talked about this for a long time. But now we're taking it into the Tyrone sphere.
Yes, you can follow me on the socials at Ty Johnson News, because I used to work for the Wall Street Journal. People ask, like, what kind of news? I used to work for the Wall Street Journal. I'll get into that a whole nother time.
Yeah.
All right, now Nicole. I need to state this before we start.
Okay.
I love you, Nicole.
Okay.
I think you're extremely talented.
Thank you.
Okay.
Although you did tell me I was a brat this week.
You are a brat, but that's a whole different thing. You are a brat, but you're talented. Okay. And I believe in what we're doing, like we're about to do. But of all the conspiracies that I know of so far, this is the one I disagree with you the most about. It does not mean that I'm correct, but I am convinced that you have this one wrong. But I want to let you have the floor for a moment and lay this out for the people, because maybe I'm looking at this all wrong.
So before we get to what the conspiracy is, I want to preface it to just show 2 examples. I always have these thoughts, right? These things that kind of pop up. And the very first one, the one that really started all of my conspiracies, is that when Carson Wentz proposed to his girlfriend the day after the Eagles won the Super Bowl, I said, he's done. Right away, I said, there's no way he could handle it. He freaked out that he wasn't the star. And I'm not going to say that I'm right, but I was right with that one. So that was the first conspiracy I had.
Hold on, though. Was that because there's conspiracies off of that conspiracy?
Yeah, maybe.
What was it that was his undoing? There are some that believe because he was a religious man and because he was saving himself for marriage, that perhaps that is what weakened him, that he needed to be pure to play. So it wasn't always just about being a star or not. Some people think it was directly related to things that women have that men don't.
Could be. And listen, maybe if we're short on podcasts, we can do one just on that. Because I like that there's conspiracy in the conspiracies. I think he couldn't handle that he wasn't a star.
Could be, but a lot of people thought.
The second conspiracy was that when the Sixers rolled out the snake logo, it was cursed and they were never going to make it out of the second round. Now they ended up...
How many teams have won the championship since then? Not that many. It's hard to win.
Right, I know, but I'm just saying, though, that then they did remove the snake and they got worse. So that conspiracy...
Dead. It's gone. It's gone. It's gone.
There was some... I do think that they need to sage the Wells Fargo. That's a whole thing for another time, too.
Oh, Lord.
Because of the Flyers. Okay, so this conspiracy, though, is where I feel very strongly about it. I felt it when I realized it, because this is how the conspiracies happen. I just have these realizations. It just comes to me. And I've told you the stories. We could probably get in, maybe we could do one on curses and seances and stuff. Because I have 2 examples that weird feelings have come over me, and then we won the Super Bowl. But that's a story for another day.
They also were a tremendous team.
Cool. But, tomato, chicken or egg, right?
All right.
So I'm just saying, this came to you one day. And this conspiracy is I felt in my bones. Mm-hmm. And I truly believe that until Bryce Harper does charity work and he does community outreach for Philadelphia, the Phillies are never going to win a World Series.
So now we know, for what we know Bryce Harper is a 2-time MVP, once with the Nationals, one with the Phillies. We know that they have not yet won a World Series, but we do know that for 6 consecutive years since he's been in Philadelphia, the regular season win total has gone up every single year. Now, we do know that. That's a fact so far, okay?
That's a fact.
During that time, you had the Houston dynasty that the Phillies went up against, but it's not like there's been another dominant team year after year. The Dodgers won the COVID year, then they failed in the playoffs multiple times, and then they won again last year when they added Ohtani and they had new players. But your conspiracy theory is that the Phillies aren't losing because they're not the best team. The Phillies aren't losing because their big hitters come up short in the small moments.
That's all true.
But you believe that they're somehow karmically cursed because, in your opinion, Bryce Harper isn't charitable enough in the city of Philadelphia.
Correct. Because I believe one of my favorite things about sports is that there's things that you can't explain. That there are we're energy, right? We're moon dust. That we're made of particles and atoms and protons and neurons and all the things, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes there's just things you can't explain, right? Not to bring up Sidney Crosby again, but I just watched an interview with him talking about how when Nate McKinnon finally won the Stanley Cup, that they had now in common to talk about like what it's like to be a champion. And Sid said that a lot of times losing is important because you understand why you lost. He says sometimes the puck just doesn't go your way and you can't explain it.
That's right.
Right? Sometimes the ball doesn't bounce your way. Sometimes the bats go flat and you can't explain it. That's the sports gods. You believe in the sports gods.
I believe in the sports gods. But here's where I draw the line. Why couldn't it be that the players choked? Why does it have to be that Bryce Harper isn't charitable enough when in actuality, we don't know how charitable he is or isn't?
It doesn't matter. That's always when people come at me, and you prepared me. You said you have to be prepared for the haters.
Yes, you got to, because here's the thing though. Okay, we know, let's pull back for a moment from Bryce Harper. On the Phillies team, we know that Kyle Schwarber, because his father is a cop, he does charitable things for the first responders, the cops, the firefighters, the EMTs in the city of Philadelphia.
Yes.
And he publicly does that.
Yes.
We know for years, a longtime Phillies pitcher, Aaron Nola, has been charitable, and he does different. Sometimes he does a bowling event. He gets a lot of the guys to come out on a day off, and he raises money for charity in the area. So we do know that so far.
Correct.
We know, when we leave in the Phillies for a moment, we know that Jalen Hurts has been quite charitable. We know publicly that Carson Wentz, who we mentioned previously, he was quite charitable. He had that whole wagon that went around, and he did quite a bit. He had the Wentz wagon. Well, he passed out food or something. Then he also did books and stuff like that. So he didn't only do that.
Yes. Jason Kelsey.
Kelsey,
almost $5 million in charity. Okay?
But that is all public.
Joel Embiid. Massive foundation, block party.
Tyrese Maxey.
Tyrese Maxey is carrying the team on his back this season, is hawking turkeys.
He didn't carry him. He crawled. He kind of drug him. And we learned something about Maxey this year that wasn't good. But that's a whole different conversation for a different time. He's a Robin, not a Batman. You can't build around him. But I just said it. You can get mad at me if you like, because you'll be mostly mad at her. But why couldn't it? So we don't know what Bryce Harper does charity-wise. We do know that he was raised as a Mormon.
Correct.
Out there in Nevada.
Yep.
And we do know that he gives some, we don't know how much, to the local Mormon church that Andy Reid used to be a part of, that Roy Halladay used to be a part of. So we do know he gives some things there. Why does that particular part of charity, in your opinion, cosmically or karmically, not do the same as what Jalen Hurts and many of these other players do?
Let me take it back again, because we do know that when he was in Washington, he had Harper's Heroes. He had actual, like a foundation name, but it's been defunct since 2019, okay?
Yes.
And then in the COVID year, we do know that he donated $500,000 to Vegas, his hometown of Vegas, which is not anymore. Now he lives in Nashville. And
that's where he grew up, though.
Right, and Philly, right? But that's the last thing that he has done publicly.
Yes.
You know, and you could be right. He could be secret lives of Mormon wives that, that they're doing stuff. My point of this is, right, and I had this guy, there's this guy that calls, that's a hater. I mean, he'll call like every once a month, and he won't say his name, but he hates the fact that he's like, you talk about Jason Kelsey. I'm like, because the world talks about Jason Kelsey and I talk about the news.
Right.
And so he got mad at me because I said that, well, first he got mad at me because I said you got to keep your expectations low for the Phillies this year. And he was like, you didn't say that about the Eagles. I go, yes, I did. And I was like, my whole thing in my life has been, I always have high expectations for people and then I get disappointed. So mine as well, just keep your expectations low. And then if you're pleasantly surprised, woo!
I lived the complete opposite of that.
I wish
I lived the complete opposite.
But so do I. And then I've had to now train my brain to just feel like just have low expectations.
The big part of life is being disappointed sometimes. That's part of it. It makes it sweeter when things go well.
So
having low expectations like that, to me, is a loser's way of life.
Listen.
I really mean it. Because you go around, no one's ever going to come through for me. Nothing good's going to ever happen. Like that sounds very, I don't know, that doesn't feel to you.
But no, I've had people in my life being like, your expectations are too high. I'm like, I only have expectations on people in things that I have done or would do. And then but then it goes back to like, there's some people that give 120%, and there's some people that give 80. 80% still a lot, but compared to 120, it's a big gap. So back to Bryce. Okay, so anytime that I've brought this up, people have said to me, well, you don't know what he does in private. You don't know what he does in private.
Right,
but
that is factual that you do not know
and I say,
what he does in private.
I say that is correct. I said, however, when you are the face of a $1 billion franchise and you are the face of a team in the poorest big city in the country, there comes in my opinion, there comes a responsibility into championing those who need the champion. Now, let's break it back to the 2008 World Series team. Chase Utley didn't talk, and he still was helping the dogs. You know,
his wife was helping the dogs,
right? And he knew, and he did it. He helped her. He did what he had to do.
Ryan Howard was charitable.
Ryan Howard was charitable. Jimmy Rollins was. Shane Victorino was charitable.
Cole Hamels was.
Right.
His wife was from here, and he really connected. His then wife, I mean, they're divorced now, but his then wife was from here and connected with this area. In fact, because his kids are here, he still spends a lot of time in this area.
Right. And he was working for the Phillies this year.
Right. Well, I mean, he's working for NBC Sports Philadelphia once a month. I mean, he's doing the Sunday games that Smith is going to be playing golf. So he can't overstate it like he's going to be here all the time.
Good point. Okay. Yeah. So my point being is that, and even talk about the Eagles this year, it's not only Jalen Hurts. Now, we will say
Brandon Graham, a lot of guys.
Brandon Graham, A.J. Brown. Look at everything that Saquon has done.
Yeah, publicly.
And yes, I agree that you could be doing stuff in private, and that's great. And in my opinion, when you have been blessed, I mean, I believe in God, I believe in a higher power. So when you've been blessed to have a position that you have, and the money that you had, you should be doing more. But that's great if you're doing something privately. But to me, when you bring something to the public, it shows that you care. It champions other people to maybe care about something they're passionate about. And everybody could champion different things, right? So like, obviously Parkinson's is a big deal for me because my dad had it for 30 years, passed away. Yeah. The Women's Veteran Center is a big deal for me. A lot of people don't know about specifically the Women's Veteran Center and how important it is to have a safe space for women and women veterans. And that's something that I really am passionate about. So there's things that I have friends that are really passionate about, you know, stray dogs and cats and animals, and people are really into women's reproductive rights and equality and like whatever your obviously, one of my best friends works for the Philadelphia School District, so she's really into students and literacy, right? So when you are the face of a $1 billion franchise and one of the top faces of Major League Baseball, especially in a city like Philadelphia, my opinion is that it helps. I mean, I sent you yesterday, Cooper DeJean is Zooming with classrooms and talking about reading and reading books to kids.
Right, but that's not money.
Okay, but this doesn't even mean money. This is not even about money. It's about him going to...
If he makes a public appearance and is with his time to bring awareness to something in the city...
Correct. It's not about money.
Because of his stature, people would follow.
And just be aware and just be like, wow, maybe I want to do something good too. Maybe I want to learn about this. Maybe I don't know about child literacy, or I don't know about sickle cell anemia, or I don't know about all these things. You have, just for instance, so Colin Sanders, who he won 2 Super Bowls with the Chiefs, and his brother Cam is like one of Taylor Swift's most famous dancers. He's gay. He talks about being openly gay. Well, his brother isn't gay, but he's doing this whole movement about LGBTQ+ in the NFL and like being more inclusive. So it's like that kind of
for having more LGBT. What is the charity?
Well,
what's he doing?
LGBTQ. Right.
He wants more fans to be included. More players. What's the thing?
Being about how the NFL is for everybody, but being more inclusive and welcoming.
There's no issue with that. But why does Harper have to do it in public? All right, you're covering that. And then why do you think he would be, by the sports gods, somehow smited because of it? because he's never been in trouble. He seems like he's we've never heard any scandals around his marriage, and he's been with this girl, for his wife, for a very long time now. We've never heard any scandal about that because we've never heard any scandal about it. No one has ever been out there in them streets, just like LeBron, just because like a straggling woman might say something. There's never been receipts. In a world where everyone has a smartphone, I'm to believe that Bryce Harper's running around with all these women and not one of them took a selfie.
No.
Right, so hold on. And then he has 3 children.
Yeah.
And to our knowledge, he's done nothing bad there. So, it seems to me like there's no proof that Bryce Harper isn't a quality human being. I'm not saying perfect.
I didn't say he wasn't quality.
Hold on. There's no proof that he's not. Therefore, why would the sports guys look upon a person who goes, I mean, seems like a pretty good guy, not doing anything too bad? Why would the sports guys then say your team can't win a World Series because you're not publicly doing more charity when he seems to be living the rest of his life at least halfway decent, based on there is a lot of people watching him, and I think we would have heard if he was out here murdering.
Whoa, you could be a crappy person and not be a murderer.
Well, okay.
And I'm not saying he's
if he was slashing tires, we'd hear about it. I just think when you're as famous as he is, you would hear about it in this era. This isn't the Michael Jordan era where his team can be down 3-2 in a series. He can leave Madison Square Garden, go straight to the casino in Atlantic City, gamble all night, come back, and no one say anything. If that was to happen now, you know how many photos there would be of that person there? So
but there's a lot more NDAs now.
Man, there's a lot more NDAs now. Yeah, but they didn't just come out. Jeter was doing NDAs. How long has he been retired?
Right.
Jeter was doing NDAs. So I don't believe that.
So back to answer your question. It's because I believe that when you are blessed to be in the position that you're in, it is wonderful that he's a good dad. To me, just because you're a good person to your own people, to me, I believe it's if you are blessed to have a platform of money. And listen, this conversation could go way deep because it could go, the whole philosophy of humanity, right? Because I believe that if you are blessed to have a lot of wonderful things, then it is cosmic, and maybe this is the Catholic guilt in me. I believe it's important to give back in a way that you can, right? So I obviously don't make a lot of money, but I can use my platform and my time to talk about the Parkinson's Walk, to talk about the Women's Veterans Center, right? Like I could talk about those kind of things. I could help. I could have, this woman who her son is a very rare disease and she's doing a walk in Lansdale and I had her on the radio to talk about it, right? So the things that you could do, because I feel very, very, very blessed that I have the gift and the platform that I have, right?
And that is good for you, absolutely. There's no doubt about it. That is kudos to you. But why is it a knock on somebody who is living their lives pretty much like a good person, but not going that extra mile publicly? Because again, we do not know what he does privately.
But I don't care what he does. The public awareness is what brings the energy. Like I said, we're moon dust, we're neurons, we're protons.
So hold on. What happens if I made a lot of money, which I don't, but let's say I did, and I decided to privately pay your rent for a year?
I think that
Hold on. It was privately. I just decided that, as a matter of fact, it wasn't just you. One person on each floor of your building. I'm assuming you live in the city, so I'm assuming there's multiple floors.
Yeah.
I take one person from each floor and I pay their rent for a year anonymously. You think the sports gods will look down, or the radio gods, or the YouTube gods, or whatever, podcast gods, and go, nope, wasn't public? I feel like if you're doing good, the sports gods would know. So that's where it's hard for me to make the leap of if Harper's living overall a good life, which I believe overall he is. And there ain't enough NDAs in the world for somebody not to release a selfie when he falls asleep if he was out here living foul.
No, I don't
Because that's what's happening to a lot of these players. They fall asleep and then them hoes grab their phones and they take a selfie with the sleeper.
They're hoes for cheating. Don't be blaming the girls.
Wait a minute, they hoes too. They hoes too. Wait a minute, but hold on. we would say, I said, I don't think he's doing that.
Right,
but I'm saying that if he was, he would be wrong. But I believe these hoes would be taking, look at me with Bryce Harper. But there are
ways to be a crappy person that doesn't involve cheating.
Well, what ways? What I'm saying is that
you could be mean.
Okay. Do you have any proof?
No, I'm just
that he's mean.
No, but I'm saying examples. Okay. You're saying, why would the sports gods punish the Phillies if Bryce Harper? But we don't know if he's given to in private.
But let's give an example. We don't know. We know Charles Barkley has given a lot to charity in his life. He's given a lot publicly.
Yeah.
Okay. He goes back to Alabama, where he's from, which was a very poor area where he grew up in Alabama before he went to Auburn.
Right.
He gives there. He's been doing a lot of charity work for a long time. Not saying Charles Barkley's a perfect person, but he's always been publicly charitable and very kind to people in public. But
they never won a championship.
He never won a championship.
I know.
So is that the sports gods punishing him, or sometimes you just don't win? Couldn't it be that some players, Karl Malone, turned out to be a very bad guy, we found out. He didn't win. Barkley, not a very bad guy. What about Reggie Miller? He seemed like a good guy. He never won. We're deciding that people that win championships.
But they're not, but I'm just saying.
Because, you mentioned religion, and we're not going to do religion here. But what I'm saying is that we have to acknowledge that bad things can happen to good people. Do we acknowledge that part?
Yes.
That happens, right? Yes. That unfortunately happens, right? So why must we assume? First of all, they could win the World Series this year, but they haven't won it so far. Why are we assuming again that the main reason, because that's what you've been putting out there for years now, that the main reason isn't because bad sports luck, isn't because sometimes, things happen in sports.
But to me, bad sports luck is the sports god.
That's impossible, because if that's the case, Michael Jordan has been proven to be not a good person.
Yeah.
He won 6 championships.
Right, but he never acted like a good person.
No. So now you change. You see, you're moving the goalposts. We know Michael Jordan didn't go from the small things. We know what Juanita, his wife, ended up finding out. Okay, he was in them streets heavy, but he was doing that. Well, she caught him once we got closer to the smartphone era.
Yeah.
But he was out there with adult actresses at one point.
Right.
Michael Jordan. Living foul, acting like he was Mr. Family. Oh, yeah, they used to show her at the games and show the kids, and Michael Jordan used to fake like he was Mr. Family, and he never was, and he won 6 times. Why do we assume that sometimes good things don't happen to bad people? Because that also happens.
That you're right. That you're absolutely right. And I said that when the Phillies lost last year. Wait, before I say this point, I do want to say, until you brought up Michael Jordan, it just came to my mind. My whole sports conspiracy started with one about Michael Jordan that my friend Beth's husband told me years ago.
About why he retired?
Yeah.
Because of gambling suspension?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all over. I don't buy it.
You don't buy it either?
No, it was a load management year and a half. That's why people shouldn't get mad at load management games. Michael Jordan took a load management year and a half because the game got to be too much for him. So he needed some load management.
Still a conspiracy.
Yeah, it's conspiracy, but it shows you that takes points off of Jordan because Jordan couldn't handle the grind. Life happened. I mean, his father unfortunately passed away, but what I'm saying is a lot of people lose their parents and still got to go to work.
Right.
He shut it down.
Right.
That should be points off Michael Jordan.
I agree.
Points off Michael Jordan.
We're going to do we were texting offline. That sounds such a corporate term. But we want to do a whole episode on old school, new school, and comparing different games. I think that's going to be really interesting.
It will be.
Okay, but back to this.
Right. So what I need you to do for me to buy it, for me to fully buy this, you got to land the plane on why he would be punished more, and the Phillies would be punished more than other people who have been worse people. We know that there's been people who did drugs. We know people who did a lot of bad things. Like there was literally, the Fatal Attraction thing where she boiled the bunny or whatever?
No, who was that?
In the movie Glenn Close, the Fatal Attraction movie.
Oh,
right.
yeah.
Someone on the 86 Mets did that to one of their teammates.
Boiled the bunny.
Boiled his bunny. They won the World Series that year. Bad people win all the time.
Right.
So why, if Bryce Harper was a bad person, why is he being punished more than some criminal people who have won? Why is he being punished so strongly then? That's where there's the disconnect with this conspiracy.
Okay. Before I answer your question, I do want to say that when the Phillies lost last year and I ran down to you, and as soon as I swung the door open, you go, "Don't even start your stuff. That's not why they lost."
That's not why they lost.
And Ricky goes, what do you talk about? And he's like, "Don't even get her started." And I feel like I'm moving him. We got to have him on an episode.
I think I'm moving him
over.
at all. You're not moving him
it's
over.
because of the authenticity. Bryce acts like he loves Philadelphia with the shoes and the clothes, and I love Philly. He went to Merlin, the mobster's cheesesteak place.
He went to a cheesesteak place of an alleged mobster.
What is it?
Joey Merlino.
Yeah, alleged.
He's the former head of the Philadelphia mob, who now denies any knowledge of the mob.
Right, so now he's just a cheesecake owner.
Cheesesteak.
Yeah,
and he went there. He stayed so. But what's the big deal? You're going to get a cheesesteak.
Because my point being is that when the authenticity, and I believe if you really love this town the way that you say you do and the way that you show you do from late March
through
until October.
They make the playoffs. They make the playoffs every year. Cut it out. They don't make the playoffs.
We don't know.
They're going to make the playoffs.
So
Cut it out.
if you claim that that you love the city in those months, the way that you get in your tattoo with the fanatic,
Got the fanatic tattoo.
then why wouldn't you want to help better people who champion you in this town? And listen, you gave me great advice. You said, he brings people a lot of joy.
He does bring people a lot of joy.
He brings people a lot of joy.
I love watching his at-bats.
And you know, that is great. And this goes back to expectations. My expectation for the face of a franchise who claims he loves this town all from March until October. He claims he loves us.
Yeah.
Does he love us from October till April? Fit to be tied. We don't know.
Well, the thing is,
so
but a lot of people don't live here in the off season. It can be a lot sometimes to live where you work when you play top pro sports. Maxey doesn't live here year round. We love Tyrese Maxey.
Right.
Schwarber doesn't live here year round. We love Kyle Schwarber.
And
Embiid lives here year round.
Right.
But people don't even love him.
Which is insane.
Well, I'm saying like we can't make that the thing.
I love Joel.
So what ultimately though, so you're basically saying in the last few minutes, you're calling him phony. You're saying what you're saying. You said that the claim to love him, when you say claim, you're saying out loud but without saying the words that you don't think it's authentic. So you think that he's pandering to the city of Philadelphia. Now he does, I will admit, he does do some pandering, but and with the fanatic stuff, and the people love it, but it brings people a lot of joy. You feel like at the end of the day, and I need you to say it though, because you're dancing. At the end of the day, it feels like you don't fully believe that it's authentic.
Correct. That's the word, is authenticity. I believe that if you are authentic and you claim to love this town the way that you say you do, then authenticity of helping and bringing awareness to people who really need it. And again, it's not everything. You have to be passionate about something. So you're saying like there's people that are jerks that are just jerks, right? There's jerks that win, but they're just jerks, and we know that they're jerks.
But Jordan was faking like he was a good person when he was a bad teammate and a kind of a bad person.
And
heavy gambler, to the point where when he came back with Washington, he made trades based on his gambling. That's been documented.
And
was living foul with his wife and children.
I agree with you.
And won 6 championships, but faked like he was the best dad in the world. So if Jordan was absolutely great, but inauthentic, yet he won. So why would Harper be punished as a phony more than Michael Jordan, who was also a phony?
It was also a different time. It was a different time in the world.
Do we believe that every single person that wins nowadays?
No.
Ohtani, they just won with the Dodgers. Then this offseason, Ohtani with his interpreter has that big gambling scandal. Many people believe that they made that go away because Ohtani's popular and perhaps Ohtani was gambling. If that's the case,
allegedly,
why didn't that stop the Dodgers from winning? Why is only Harper being punished.
That's why it's called a conspiracy. Because there's things that we just don't understand. But all I know is sometimes I feel stuff in my bones. And this is one of those things. And I told you last year, I told you the year before. You and I've worked together for over 6 years now. It's been 2 years since this has come to me. And I've said, I want to be proven wrong. I said that. I'm like, I want to be proven wrong. I desperately want Bryce Harper to announce a charity event and we win the World Series.
So what happens if just like on, as we record this, it's a Thursday. What happens on like Saturday? Okay, when people are listening to the podcast or watching on YouTube, thank everybody for the views, and we appreciate you guys. Just tell a friend to tell a friend. That's all we ask.
Tell a friend to tell a friend.
That's all you got to do. And he writes a check on Saturday for $1 million to the Boys and Girls Club or to PAL Athletics, the Police Athletic League, so other kids can follow in his footsteps and play baseball.
Yeah.
You think they'll just win the World Series?
I think it'll be a good start.
No. A good start. Hold on. If he publicly came forward, held a big check, sat down with the head of the Police Athletic League and said, not only with this $1 million, I want you to build more fields and make baseball more accessible for more kids in the city of Philadelphia.
Yes, parade down Broad Street.
That they would just win.
Boom.
But then what would happen then if Freddie Freeman from the Dodgers then went to the Police Athletic League in Los Angeles and wrote a check for $1.5 million? Would that give them more to win? What I'm saying is that what's the line?
Because the line is Philadelphia.
No. What I mean is, why would then Philadelphia be more blessed by Harper's $1 million than LA would be more blessed by Freeman's $1.5 million? Okay, so a team that didn't win. The Braves didn't win.
Right.
Okay, they're struggling.
They won a couple years ago.
They're 0-7 last year. They're 0-7.
And they had the guy with the drugs. Performance enhanced.
Yeah, he's suspended though. He's out. What happens now? There's a lot of teams that don't win. A lot of teams that haven't won. The Cleveland Guardians, that franchise hasn't won for a long time. Does that mean that those players aren't charitable? They've been very good. They made the playoffs last year. The Yankees have not won since 1 year after the Phillies did, 2009. Is it because Jeter was very charitable? He didn't win after 2009, and neither has anyone else for the Yankees. They have not won a World Series.
But you know what? Now they're allowing beards, so we'll see if the beards help.
But why would a beard be called? See, this is my issue with your conspiracy. At the end of the day, you just think this is about you thinking Harper is phony.
You can't explain the conspiracy. That's the thing.
You got to be able to explain it. Or there's certain conspiracies I believe because I can connect the dots. There's a conspiracy theory about the Sixers right now that I'm not going to say on here, but I'll write it down, put it in a sealed envelope, and then when it happens, then you'll unseal it and we'll talk about it on the show. There are conspiracies sometimes, most times, that I can connect the dots. What do the sports gods gain? What do they gain by smiting Bryce Harper, who
because the sports gods want him to do good things for Philadelphia.
Do we know if Ohtani gives anything to charity?
But you're comparing.
I have to compare stars.
That's not. We're talking
Stars
about Philadelphia. We're a different entity here.
So the Flyers have not won since the 70s.
Yeah.
They do a carnival for charity every year in which every single player for decades goes. They do a full charity public carnival where fans can meet the players directly. And they've been doing that for decades.
Yeah.
And they have not won since 1975.
So
why in Philadelphia, those guys all do charity.
Yeah.
And yet they haven't won since 75. So why did the charity not help them in Philadelphia?
Because the Wells Fargo Center's cursed.
So you can't see now it's the Wells Fargo Center's cursed. But we know Citizens Bank, and the link isn't cursed. So the two buildings around it aren't cursed, but this Wells Fargo Center is cursed.
It's what's happening in the bone. It's what's happening in the bones.
And Embiid didn't get rewarded for his charity, and Maxey hasn't been rewarded for his charity, but somehow Bryce Harper's being punished for his charity. That's why I don't buy it, because there are a lot of charitable people that have not won in this city, including, like I mentioned, Charles Barkley, including Allen Iverson, who got in a lot of trouble and stuff, but absolutely gave back.
I opened this podcast by saying some things don't make sense. It's just it's just the way that I feel. It's just like when I was sitting in the production room back in 2017 and a whoosh came over me and I said, oh my God, the Eagles are going to win the Super Bowl. And then this year, when I was driving to my best friend Diane, shout out to her son Bo. Bo had a swim meet at the University of Delaware, and I was driving down.
What was their record?
And I saw a guy. It was like something out of a movie. It was like there was no one on the street, and all of a sudden, this random college-looking kid, white guy in a Kelly Green, Jalen Hurts jersey, like walks across in front of my car and goes into a house, and the same feeling, whoosh, came over me.
So why don't you ever whoosh the lottery numbers?
Because it's just not how it works. You can't predict the whoosh.
See, this is my problem.
You can't.
I picked them to win the Super Bowl in like October, okay? When they beat the Bengals, all right, a long time ago. And people said I was crazy. But that doesn't mean that I have cosmic powers. I'm just saying.
Right, because you're looking at it from a very pragmatic
That's
way.
what I do.
Yeah, and that's what you do. That's why we have this podcast, because I'm talking about the woo-woo, and you're talking about, but why do the bats go cold?
Because because they don't
Sports
value
gods.
each at bat the same way they're supposed to. They don't bear down and concentrate the way they're supposed to. Also, it's hard to hit a baseball. I know fans don't want to hear that. They're not the only team. One team is going to win. 29 other teams are going to be disappointed. It will not be because of the sports gods.
So we need to wrap this up, but let me end by saying, I want to be wrong.
Don't you worry.
I want to be wrong.
You are.
I want to be wrong in the fact that I want Bryce to do charity and we want to win. And if we win and he doesn't do charity, then I'll be proven wrong I will say I was wrong.
You mean public charity? Because he may do charity
right, we don't know
about.
We don't know.
Fair enough. Well, that is our time on this was episode 3 of Coworker Conspiracy. For Nicole Mahalik, I'm Tyrone Johnson, and we'll see you guys soon.